And then also to reach out to our networks for hope if we can't find hope ourselves. So, there are a lot of resources if people are feeling extremely hopeless, which is suicidal. There are a lot of resources, text chat lines to connect with or suicide hotlines. But to really stay connected now when we are being isolated, due to what's going on in the environment. I was interviewing Shekhar Saxena from the World Health Organization earlier today and yesterday, and he talked about we need to not change the language around social isolation, and it's more physical isolation, because we need to physically distance ourselves, but we don't want to socially distance ourselves and isolate. So doing things like connecting online or via phone or Skype or FaceTiming with friends and family is really so important right now.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned something I think was that's very important, in that with all the things that are happening right now, that we calm ourselves down and not react. How do you do that personally when times come and you're feeling a little more anxious? What do you do to kind of relax and calm yourself down? And how would you recommend that people similarly do that?
Yeah, right. I mean, so we are in a very high state of alert right now. And I, definitely realized it today getting away from the news and just how helpful, not being attached to the news is and not feeding. It's like the entire world is ruminating right now. Like this is we are just going over and over. And so really getting distance from that self and being informed and staying informed is important. And yet, how often do I really need to know how many cases there are and where they are and what's getting closed? And it can become very overwhelming very quickly. So, that's one thing, but for sure in times of high kind of stress, my exercise, my nutrition, my meditation, my connecting to friends and family, even if I live alone with my dog, my getting out in nature, like these are all things that are must-dos. They're not nice to do's, they're must-dos. I'm myself susceptible to heading into a major depressive episode from all of the changes that are happening, around the world. And so I need to be really careful that I'm taking care of my mental health first and foremost. I work a lot at my computer, and I could sit here and work for 12 hours if I'm not careful, just because I get so focused on my task and what I'm doing. And it's, getting up every hour, stretching, walking around, and making sure I'm taking care of myself first and foremost, and experiencing my emotions as they come up and not running from them. So those are all really critical. Not eating, not snacking all the time. So yeah.
Yeah, see that's a hard one for me these days. Although I was fortunate enough to get to the grocery store earlier in the week and got a lot of healthier things. So I'm snacking on vegetables, but yeah, I've noticed a lot in especially the last couple of days.
Yeah.
My like craving for like something crunchy, so a lot of carrots has increased more so than it usually has.
Right. Yeah, no, I hear you for sure. And it's good, right? Carrots, celery, if you notice that, like to find things that that are not horrible for you. And
yeah, exactly.
Sure.
That loud, satisfying crunch, it's still like it does something.
Exactly.
Yeah. So in your own life, do you journal? How do you check in with yourself to make sure that you haven't gone down a path that you know is self-destructive?
Yeah, it's very interesting. No, I mean, I do so much of it through my work. I mean, it's really a constant, that's what I'm working on all day, is really hope and happiness. And I've been sober 15 years, so getting free of a lot of my addictions has really helped kind of keep me grounded and present. And I'm pretty self-aware now of my body and when I feel off. So, which is, I used to just run, like trying to make it feel better. And now I allow myself, like, if I feel sad, I allow myself to cry. I just really let things kind of flow through me.
Mm-hmm.
My writing is a lot of kind of my journaling. So I just wrote a book on hope, and I mean, that was an intense experience looking back at my life and kind of how hope was kind of created through my own personal experience, lived experience. And, that was a very therapeutic and healing.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about your book then. It's called the Biggest Little Book About Hope, and you've recently released it.
Yes, very
Yes.
exciting.
Yes, which was absolutely fantastic. And you and I talked a little bit about that previously, the last couple of weeks.
Yes, and you've been so helpful. Amazing. It saved me.
Wonderful. I'm glad that I could be helpful. It also helped that I had also just kind of released a book a few weeks ahead and stumbled through a lot of things. So beyond wanting to tell your story, and that may be the reason why you released this book, but why this book? Why now in your journey?
Yeah, so interestingly, my goal wasn't really to tell my story. My goal was to inform people and really about hope and what I uniquely know about hope, so that it inspired them to act and take action as it relates to hope. As I said, my journey around hopelessness started, focused on suicide and depression. And as I got deep into the research around hopelessness, I have come to find out it is the only predictor of weapon carrying at school. When we look at violence in youth and in the school, the underlying cause, while restricting access to means is an effective way to reduce these,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like unless we address the cause, we're not going to solve the problem. And I can imagine the extreme sense of hopelessness that these people that do these mass shootings or that act this way, that they must be feeling. And I said in the book, while we don't want to have empathy for a shooter, I think it's necessary if we want to solve the problem. So you look at addiction, and hopelessness is very high in addiction. It's high in inner city youth. It's 25% of youth feel hopeless on a regular basis. That to me is just really shocking and alarming, and I feel like people need to act around that. In the LGBTQ community, that's 65%
Mm-hmm.
on a regular basis feel hopeless. And so I started learning in self-directed violence and violence, partner violence. I mean, all kinds of things are related to hopelessness. And so as I started learning about it, there's a lot I want to do around the work for hope, and a lot we can do for very little cost. And I thought it was super important that I shared what I knew. I mean, there's all kinds of work I want to do in the curriculum, but I felt like if I could share my story in a way that gave the evidence around it, so I get a lot into the research around hope itself. And then my story that I think is kind of a divine story around how I came to hope and how I came to understand it and what's happened in my life that's given me a lot of access and information that others maybe don't have, and use it to teach everything I know about hope right now, so that regardless of if I get funding to do more curriculum or improve it or create a Hopeful Mindsets platform, at least I get the knowledge out there in a way that hopefully it reaches the people that need it, so that they have the same resources I do as it relates to hope. So that was kind of that's my goal. That was my goal for doing it. The story was just a way to kind of give some meaning to how I came to it, really.
Okay. So also right now you're working on another project that's launching this week, which is the around March 20th, which is the International Day of Happiness. So tell me more about the happiness course that you are launching or currently launched right now.
Yeah, definitely. So, as I mentioned, my company, The Mood Factory. So I started the company because I wanted to figure out how I can become happier. So, I mean, I used to wear like all black. Colors were not a part of my life. And it's so
Like,
funny.
did
Yeah.
you go like hardcore goth, or was it just like dress all in black, like
I mean,
architects dress all in black?
yeah, it was just more black.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I started learning and like, how can I not just be like stay alive, right? Which to me is hope. Like, how can I not just be here, but how can I really enjoy being here and engage in life? And we're out of the present moment 50% of the time. And if we can just engage our senses, we can be here now. And so, yeah, Dr. Lombardo and I, she's Shaq O'Neal's head coach for happiness, and she's just been really great. She's been part of my nonprofit and Hopeful Minds work, and we put together through my company a 21 Day to Happiness course, because happiness is really it's a skill
Mhm.
and you need to practice it. And happiness is an important part of hope, and hope is an important part of happiness. But so we created a course where it's 21 days, where each day you just get emailed a tidbit, one thing you can do that day, a skill you can practice. And then I'll do a Facebook Live every day, where we can just talk about like how the practice is going and if you're doing it. But really, hope is an intention, or happiness is an intentional act, and you have to constantly be doing it. And I
Mhm.
forget to do it. So, especially during times of stress, I mean, I forget to use my skills. And it's times like these where we need to use them really more than ever.
Mhm.
So, yeah, so that's where what the course is about. We have a scent line based on how smells affect your moods, that I developed with some scientists. That's great. And using our sense of smell is a great way to get present. It takes us out of our mind and into the moment, right where we are. And the research says, which I find fascinating, that we're happier in the present moment than we are in our mind, whether or not we're thinking of something positive or negative. So even if we're remembering like our happiest wedding day, we're still happier in this present moment. And so that Harvard did a really unique study around that, and I found that, really fascinating.
Yeah, that is fascinating. Are there, in your research, are there particular scents that more people, I guess, pull people more into the present and make them positive versus other scents?
Yeah, so I mean, the research, so it's all sense kind of bring you into the moment because you're engaging with your senses. So
Hmm.
like if you touch something, smell something, I mean, taste something, like that means you're here in the moment. So,
Hmm.
but with how I like to talk about it with scents, or different scents do different things. So like citruses are more uplifting, kind of invigorating. So that's in our happiness scent. Whereas lavender is more of a calming and sleep. So that's in our tranquility sense. And, if we want to create our optimal mood state, we should really be creating things that engage all of our senses for that mood state. So if you're not sleeping well, you want to look at your five senses, your environment that you've created, and make sure that those are optimal for sleep. So the scent, you want to make sure that lighting is out of your room so that you have a dark room. You want to make sure that what's touching you feels good to you, that's restful. Not so much taste, but I'm sure if you had a hot pepper before bed, you would have problems sleeping. I
Yeah.
mean, so you want to kind of look at all of that, right? And yes, we have a white paper on scents and moods on our site, but lemon and citruses are kind of uplifting, and mints are energizing. So,
Wonderful. So I'd like to hear more about how you think and approach fear, and ultimately then how you move past it. Obviously in the research that you do, as well as just your own personal life, on times when you're suddenly feeling fearful, how is it that you move past that?
yeah, that is a great question. I mean, so first of all, I feel it, like I've stopped running from it. So I think that has been my bit. I mean, I used to run from it. I used to think that I could not handle the pain. I mean, losing my dad was so traumatic, and I thought that the pain of feeling the pain would literally kill me. But there are so many things that I am, that I feel fear around, whether it's finances, whether it's,